Okay, today I want to be talking to you about measuring and estimating all of those awesome, cool things. But before we can get into measuring things, we've got to know how to use benchmarks to figure out what units of measurements we should be measuring with and which tools we should be using. So that's what we're going to be exploring. You want to make sure that you know all of these benchmarks that we're going to be talking about. And there are a couple of them, okay? There are 4 benchmarks that we're going to take a look at more closely. So let's go ahead and explore each of those benchmarks. Before we get into the benchmarks, it's extremely important that you know the different tools that we can use to measure things with. The first tool that we can use to measure things with, this right here that I'm going to highlight in green, that tool right there, that is called a meter or a yardstick, okay? It's a meter or a yardstick, and you can see that it's pretty big. It's actually, a meter and a yardstick actually has 3 rulers in it. So I'm holding a ruler up above there so you can kind of see that. That's actually 1, 2, 3. When you're measuring, you don't want to leave a gap there, but I wanted you to see that the sizes are about the same. So there's actually 3 rulers in a meter stick or a yardstick. This right here, you may not have seen very much. You may not have seen that one. Let me use a different color. You may not have seen that one very often. That one right there, that's called a tape measure. And you use that for anything that is bigger than a yard or a meter stick. I don't like it. I don't have a smile right here, so let me fix my smile. Woo-hoo. Give myself a smile because I don't look too happy in that picture. So that is a tape measure, a meter, and then a meter yardstick, and then a ruler. Those are some of the ones that we'll be taking a look at. So you can see here, I'm opening up a tape measure in this picture. So in this picture, you can see right here is that tape measure. Look at how big it is. It actually goes even bigger than that. This right here is a tape measure. Look at how big it goes. That's pretty big tape measure. It's a lot bigger than a ruler, and it's a lot bigger than a yardstick. If we look right here, here is that yardstick or meter stick. That's how big that is. Remember, there's 3 rulers in that. Now I'm going to highlight in yellow the tape measure. Look at how big the tape measure is. You can't really see it from there, but the tape measure goes all the way down there. Oh, it's hard to see once it gets down there. But you can see the tape measure goes all the way down here. I'll draw a line to the bottom of it. Right there is the bottom of that tape measure. Way down there. Look at how long it is. It's much longer than that yardstick or meter stick. Okay, so those are some of the different tools that we'll be using to measure. So let's explore our first benchmark, all right? Because benchmarks help you think about mathematics and what you're going to use to actually measure something. So for example, if I was going to ask you to measure something, that was kind of big, it'd be important to know what you're going to use to measure it with, okay? So for example, if I was going to ask you to measure this chair, we would want to use this first benchmark to measure this chair because it would be big enough to use. Our first benchmark is a meter or a yardstick, okay? That's this guy right here, meter or yard. So whenever you're thinking, how big is this object? How big is the chair? Well, I know that I'm going to use a meter or a yardstick because I know that the chair is about the same size as the width of my classroom door. So when an object is about the width of your classroom door, just like this, make sure that you think about a meter or a yardstick. Because a meter or a yardstick is about the width of your classroom door. So that's our first benchmark. Let's take a look at the benchmark number 2. Benchmark number 2. This is a foot, which is a ruler, the size of a ruler, which is 12 inches. So you can see right here, each ruler has 12 total inches in it. Each of these lines here are equally spaced. It's the same amount of space between each of those. So benchmark number 2, when you're measuring objects like a book. For example, right here, we have a book called Blended. If I was going to measure this book, I would want to use benchmark number 2, which is a foot, which is a ruler. All right, I want to use that ruler, which is about from my wrist to my elbow. So when you're thinking about what should I measure this with, think about your wrist to your elbow. If it's about from your wrist to your elbow or close to it, you would want to use a ruler, 12 inches. So that's how you can use benchmark number 2 to figure that out. Remember, there's 12 inches in a ruler. Let's take a look at our next benchmark. So benchmark number 2 is where you measure out when you're using from your wrist to your elbow to figure out if you're going to use a ruler or not. If it's about the width of your door, use a meter stick, use a yardstick. If it's bigger than your door, we'll talk about that one in a second. The next one is, when you're measuring, the next smallest one is called an inch, benchmark 3. So when you're looking to measure in smaller objects that are smaller than your wrist to your elbow, you're then going to be using what's called the inch. And that is the part on the ruler right here. See this number right there? That's 1 inch, 2 inches, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember what I said, they're all equally spaced too. So those are our different inches there. Each inch, this is really cool, so look at this. Each inch, if you have an object that measures from about here to here, which is the bent part of your thumb, if you have an object that measures from the bent part of your thumb, then that's when you know you need to use an inch. So if an object is about this size, if it's about this size, then you'd want to use an inch. So for example, my thing here, I would not use a ruler. It's way too small to use a ruler, but I could use an inch. I could say it's about 1, 2, about 3 inches there. So the bent part of your thumb, so from this part of your thumb to this part of your thumb is about 1 inch, okay? That'll give you a good idea to kind of estimate how many inches it is. So I could say it's about 1, about 2, about 3 inches on that one, okay? I wouldn't use inches to measure this TV because that'd be a lot of inches. See how long that would take to do that? That's not efficient. My bent thumb does not help me measure a book either. 1, 2, 3, just takes a little bit longer. I'd probably use a ruler for that book because it'd be a little bit quicker. But you can see that an inch is the bent part of your thumb. The next one is a centimeter. A centimeter is also on a ruler too. You're going to see on your rulers there's actually 2 different sides. You've got your inch side, which is about the bent size of your thumb, remember? On the other side of your ruler, you're going to have what's called centimeters. And this is denoted with the cm. See that? And this is a centimeter. And a centimeter is about the width of your pinky. So as you can see right here, if I'm measuring something that's smaller than this, I'm going to use a centimeter. So a centimeter is about the width of a pinky. And the centimeter sides are set up the same way as well. They're all equal size. All equal sized. All of those are equal sized. So if I was measuring something in centimeters, I'd say that it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. About 6 centimeters would be this device right here. So those are your benchmarks. If you're measuring something that is bigger than the width of your classroom door, make sure you use a tape measure. So think about a tape measure. If you're measuring something that is about the width of your classroom door or close, then you're going to want to use a yardstick or a meter stick, okay? About the width of your door. If you're measuring something that is about the distance from your wrist to your elbow, you're going to want to use a ruler that has 12 inches. That's going to give you a good measuring device. If you're measuring something that is about the width of your bent finger, that's an inch. You're going to go to the inch side of your ruler. The inch side of your ruler. And if you're measuring something that's smaller than an inch, about the width of your pinky, that's called a centimeter. You're going to go to the centimeter side of your ruler, which is a little bit smaller. Have fun.